So not too long ago, we shot a video that was going further in depth of the transition areas. Now, if you look back at my transition area playlist, you'll find that the transition areas are something very, very important to me because I really believe that's how we connect the dots, if you will, to a property, of any property, around the country, anywhere around the whitetail range. It has to have a connection through a transition area. Your food sources, your bedding areas, all of your inlets, your accesses, all are created around and connected by a transition area. Now, I see something that's going around the industry, and we're not going to name any names today. I'm not into that, but I'm going to reach out to some folks that this is going to resonate with real close to the heart here, because I have some followers that have kind of led me to this topic. So it's the second video in the series that we did not too long ago about transition areas. What is a complete transition area, how to promote those transition areas. So today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about why a transition area is so powerful and what I've been seeing out there along the road that has got us to this point that we need to talk about this. I have 20 plus clients this year that have reached out with very similar issues. I see it more so this year than I've ever seen it before, and I believe I know why that is so strong right now, and why I'm seeing so much of that, why it's finding me and why I'm finding it, is because I believe that there is still a huge part of the industry, as far as through client client to designer relationships, that's still a disconnect, and there's still folks out there that are hiring folks that are designing from above, or that are in this situation that we're going to speak of today, that are designing a 120 acre parcel in 2 hours. So I think what's happening is it's a roundabout way. You're not the only client that day. It's a roundabout outlook, if you will, of your property. And then what happens is the farm ends up being designed from above anyway. So pretty much the travel that was paid for by the clients, or the time spent on there by the consultant, was spent to get some goals, talk about deer hunting, talk about family, and go around the outside of this. And then they get back to camp and they start dropping waypoints, or they start designing pieces of the puzzle. Well, that's not the way I do it. That's the way I'm finding that a lot of people are doing it. So to kind of give you a rundown, and we've talked about this before, the way I do this is I'm designing as we are walking the property. I used to say, anything over 20 acres, anything over 40 acres, you're my only client for the day. Well, now you're my only client for the day. I don't have a acreage amount that separates each client from each area, if you will. So you're my only client for the day. So larger parcels, anything over the 160 that starts climbing into contour, it may take 2 days, and that's something that we already have hashed out before I'm even there. How long that might take, what that cost is to do that, all of that is talked about. So this year, like I said, I've got 20 clients plus that have reached out with all the same issue, and I have referred to this as this before, but I'm going to emphasize this as the pizza effect, the design that to me looks like a pizza pie. So I think that's what's happening. I think that your folks that are out there that are designing, that are consulting, are seeing what they think they are seeing what they need to see from the outside of this, and they are then designing it from afar anyway. Well, at that point, they might just as well have designed it from afar. What we are doing is, when I start these properties, I'm walking in as we're walking your accesses, as your borders. I'm looking for access, how to get you in and out of there. I'm looking for food sources, and we're dropping in along the way and starting to connect the dots on tree stand locations. Along that path, what we are doing is we are creating a transition area. So here we're going to touch on what I see, and then we're going to touch on, if you are one of these clients inside of that 20 that I have this year, about a dozen of which haven't implemented that design at all, Some of them had that design done 2 years ago and still haven't touched it because they're confused. They don't want to implement something that is not dear to their heart, that they really strongly feel that's going to get them to the success that their property possibly has. Brings this to a point today. This property that we're going to talk about, folks, could be one of the strongest 120 acre parcels in the nation. I really believe that. And it's in the Midwest. We're not going to go into fine detail about exactly where this is at, but this property has loads of potential. And when I say loads of potential, I'm talking multiple, has a chance to harvest multiple, to be a herd influencer, to have an area that produces, a farm that produces multiple mature bucks, not an inch thing, but multiple mature bucks every year. 4, 5, 6-year-old bucks. Doesn't happen. The problem with this is this gentleman that I'm speaking of has had this plan done 2 years ago and has not implemented a single thing. And the reason is because 2 years ago he feels he was taken advantage of, and now I'm luckily getting the chance this year, and I feel very blessed to be able to go down and tie these. And how did tie this piece of this puzzle together for him? But how did we get to that point? The reason is this isn't the only one that's out there. So without going down the road of bashing anybody's designs or anything, I always tell folks that reach out to me is this, and there's a lot of you that are watching this because you have reached out to me and asked this very similar question. What do we do? Can you go chase the guy down and ask for your money back? Well, you probably could, but you've already wasted X amount of time, X amount of dollars. It's time to move forward. It's time to bring a property such as this that we're going to talk about to the surface. Now, I've got a piece here, a paper that I'm going to look at that's trace this over, and we're going to get this very close. And if you don't get that kind of weary feeling of this as you're watching it, as far as this is what is being done out there and not connected through a transition area situation, this is why I feel so strongly about transition areas. So this is on this design for this gentleman. There is a house on it, which wasn't, it didn't have a waypoint, but it was very visible from the aerial. And up in this corner, it has a shape that's very similar. It's just a rounded shape. It's not exactly round. This other corner over here has a oblong shape. This area down in the corner has a complete square shape. Had a little dog leg in it there. This in the center is just full of these, what I call pockets. Now, when I had this, there was something along the lines of this. We're still trying to determine what exactly that is. But now this is all color coordinated. So in this, there's a rhyme and a reason that obviously the consultant or the designer set this up this way. So this situation, like many, the client couldn't tell me what they were. So we started sorting things out through talking, through conversation, and knowing that I'm telling these folks, hey, I can't tell you how to fix this right now without my boots on the ground, because I'd be no better than what has happened here. But I can tell you, one of the things I can tell you is you don't have a defined line of travel, and you are playing with fire trying to get into the center of a property like this. So there was one stand location here, one stand location here, one in the center, one directly in the center, and one to the west side of the farm. Those were the stand locations on 120 acres that were designed. So this is a area of the country that is not real rugged, not like parts of Kentucky, not Calhoun County, Illinois, not Buffalo County, Wisconsin contour, but has some very defined contour lines that you could work with. So 120 acres, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stand locations, which is a concern. 1, 2, one of them right in the dead center of the property is a rifle blind. So in a bow hunting situation, which the client is a avid bow hunter, So how do you make heads or tails of this? And so this also, guys, goes for folks that are two separate platforms here, but folks that are listening to this that have been designing a property of your own through aerials, through boots on the ground, going in and then, you know, putting waypoints around the property and trying to make sense of deer movement, how to enhance it, and then having something that's not connected. The difference between you doing it and a designer doing it, or a consultant doing it, is you actually put boots on the ground. You have spent multiple hours on the property to come up with these areas that mean something to you. For someone else to come in that has never set foot on your property and walk the property in 2 hours and set these locations has done nothing but cost you time and done a complete disservice to your property. So this is, like I said, I wouldn't be doing one of these videos if this was just the first time that I seen one of these and it kind of irritated me. These happen multiple times a year. So how do we fix this? How do we bring this issue to the surface? How do we figure out why this was placed here? And this situation, like I said, he has done some things, but he didn't do all things. Well, so two things that we defined. This was food. This was food. So first of all, there's a ridge system that runs directly through the center of this box that was created, this being the high point of the ridge, and it's impossible to plant that food plot in a complete square like that. So that was one of his concerns. How was he going to do that without causing huge erosion issues? Because, like I said, it's got enough contour that would be a problem. So that's one of the things that had stopped him. But he did plant what he had planted. Now, so this now is planted like this. So now he's taken that equation, part of the equation, out. So food to the south, food to the north, all on the west side of the property, with a prevailing, in this area, prevailing, you know, in the fall, mainly the west and northwest winds. So, which brings another issue here to the table. But so what do we do? So I've been talking with this gentleman now for over a year, and we have a visit coming up with him, and we're going to figure out how to bring this issue to the surface and get past it. So one of the things is, guys, that you can see is there's no transition areas. There is nothing connecting this farm, and these were, it looks very vague right now, but these were, this was color coded, but there's no lines of travel. I think that there is a reason that these pockets, these hardwood pockets, were cut out in here to create browse, to create movement. But what you've done is you went in the interior of the property now and opened these pockets, which is probably good for browse, but there's no rhyme or reason to connect it. So you have a lot of room for air all the way around this property. So whether this is a 40, whether this is a 80, whether this is a 120, like this parcel here that we're speaking of, it has to connect. It has to connect it. How do you connect it? You connect it with a transition area. So some cases, most cases, it's the goal is to try to connect all of the icons, if you will, that you put, all the high points or the sought after areas, to try to connect them together in a 360-degree circle, a racetrack, if you will. Now, that doesn't always happen because of ridges that dead end you, or areas that you can't possibly get into on farms. Well, I only see a couple of those a year that are, it's impossible to connect the dots. Most of my designs, if you follow along, if you're one of the clients that sees any of my stuff, you'll see that somehow, some way, all of that stuff is connected. And the reason is because it is a transition area. You are trying to encompass the movement as much as you can possibly during that 24-hour period of the day, broke down into 12 hours of that huntable time period. You are trying to keep those deer, especially during the rut, cruising on their feet, searching for does, and to keep your does where they need to be, where they belong, and it has to make a rhyme or reason. Here, in this situation, there are just way too many issues, and it doesn't connect. So, you know, what we had determined is this was screening, this was a berm, brush berm that was recommended to put in here from the house, which was about 300 yards interior of the farm. We've determined that. So on 120 acres now, 300 acres now, you are almost in the center of this 1330 wide partial. You are into the center of it. So that was one, let's try to figure out why that was done. This was all screening done by tree plantings, and he had some comments in there about some spruce plantings and Egyptian wheat, stuff like that. So the theory is here, you can see, to try to cut that visibility away from the farm. The issue is this is down over a hill, and there's you couldn't possibly see it unless you flew up out of there with an airplane to begin with. You're not going to see the cabin to begin with. So it's a huge chunk of the property here. My feeling is that went to waste. Second thing is this screening, or screening out here in the food source. How do you get around it? Luckily, the food was on the west side, so it gave some ability to hunt the interior, or hunt the downwind side of these, your predominant wind coming from the west or the northwest into it, being able to hunt on the east. But as you can see, it's a grid laid out here of stand locations, and there's one stand that is definitely a west wind stand. There's one here on the north. If this is what we think it was, this is set into switchgrass, so blowing the wind back into it. So you can make some rhyme and reason to this, but still there's no transitions. Well, just simply by talking to the gentleman, and I haven't even shared this with him, and if you're watching this out there, hopefully you get a chuckle out of this, because, and I want to make this very clear. What I draw on this board right now is not set in stone until I get to your property, or any of the properties that this may resonate with. But so these were pockets. These were pockets that we were looking for. They were looking for regeneration, hardwood regeneration in this area. There's a lot of maple, soft maple is what I've been told, red maple, all this stuff in here growing. So this was to get some regeneration growing. Well, by doing that, obviously that comes with debris. So that you're going to have debris all the way around this interior of it. You're going to have debris of trees all the way, inside, outside. They're not all directional hinge cut like we would recommend. So you've got all the way around this, you've got this mass tornado effect of debris that was recommended to just go in and cut these down, and not hinge cut some of them, flush cut some of them, whatever you had to do, whatever worked, just put them on the ground, right? Well, so now you've got a real thick core area, and we need to transfer these deer out to the sides. How are we going to transfer them from food to switchgrass? This was actually switch. How are we going to transfer them around this farm without a transition area? So that's where it ended with the design. It was just as I'm talking to you, that's what was relayed to the customer. So you really have to watch what you're asking for, what you're paying for. Before someone leaves your property, make sure that you are, first of all, hopefully that person even came to the property. Second thing is, make sure you understand how these connect. If there's a stand here, like I said, this isn't set in stone until I get there, but I would imagine that we need to have a transition area, a line of travel between point A and point B. I would also imagine that we need a transition area out of here, somewhere around here, depending on structure. We need to have a transition area that comes in and uses the edge of this switchgrass as a wind block, or as a transition area that connect these bedding areas to the screen area around. Now you can see that there's a rhyme and a reason. So what we talked about in this situation about what to do was, around these areas is to build buck trails, snake trails, more secluded trails into these areas to try to promote those areas so what's in there, where you're placing these, is to try to put these, if this line of travel come on the outside, to put these trails into this. So, but by doing this, guys, you can see just by taking a little time here, now we've created what, 2 or 3 more stand locations already. This needs to go away. There's no possible way to get in the center of that without, having a stand location in the center of all this, what was meant for bedding and browse, is a destruction of this whole entire 120 acres. So we ruled that out. We need to find out where all those other points are that we can make this. Now, just situations just like this. There's no doe bedding that was created on the food sources. There's no emphasis on where to keep this doe drama. So in this situation, is there a way to cure it if this has already been implemented or started to be worked on from a design that you have taken advice from? And the answer is yes, because I feel very strongly about digging into the roots, the root cause, or the root of the evil here, if you will, into this tornado effect, and how to really bring these to the surface. Is there a way to get that done? There is, and one of the biggest steps is the reason of this video, the topic that we're talking today. It comes through powerful transition areas. So as we're creating this, then we're talking about directional hinge cutting, doing the 45, doing the 90s off from here. How close do you get to these areas? Why we're doing it? Where your doe bedding areas need to be? Why that doe bedding area needs to be promoted? Can we put it into a hub style design so we know where those does are at? Can we tie these points of impact down to stand locations? Can we transfer these deer from one side of this property to the other? Is there better ways to get into this? These are, where is your foot trail? How do you get in and out? What is planted in here? These are things that make the outcome of a property powerful. But I think, so to end this deal here on the transition, that's why we have transition areas, is to connect the dots, connect the icons, connect the waypoints to places that you have or had placed there. So if you're watching this and you haven't had that done by someone else and you haven't paid for that, but like I said, it's something that you've researched, you've placed all these on here, you're learning the deer movement on your property, whether it's new or old, and you're starting to really pick apart the process, the importance of a property. I encourage you to start with how, or to connect the dots with, where can those transition areas be? Because that is your line of travel. Line of travel, transition areas, transition corridors, whatever that label is, and like we had said in the past, my terminology between corridors and transition areas are two different things, but that is how you put this piece of this puzzle together, so you're not getting yourself in trouble. So the last thing we're going to touch on is this. If you were not to create a transition area, you don't have a limit. You don't have a border where it's like, this is all the further I'm going in, unless there's contour that hides me in a creek drainage that I can get in and out of the interior of this and not, without a doubt, get in and out without getting busted, maybe only hunt it once or twice a year. There has to be a limit around this. This is you have your fence line, that's your border for your neighbor. You have your transition area, that's a border for you not to go in too far into the core of your property. And without having that transition area, guys, and this one looks very simple, that it's completely around the outside. Sometimes it does have to come in. Sometimes the transition area hardly ever is it just a complete, racetrack effect all the way around the property. It has to follow the contour, but it's there for a reason. It's there so you don't get yourself in trouble. There's a reason that line of travel is promoted for the deer, to give them structure, to encompass that 12 hours of on their feet huntable daylight movement. If not, what happens is, this is what I see happening with these pockets, this pizza pie look that's being designed out there, is that's where folks get themselves into trouble, or are led astray, are told to go in that, is because they want to hunt these areas, but they don't know how they're going to get in, they don't know how they're going to get out. You just need to hunt them. I'm just bringing the real facts to folks out there, that this is what's happening, this is what I see time and time again, and this is why folks are getting in trouble, is because there's no limitation, there's no defined line of travel, there's nothing being promoted, They don't have a handbook. They don't have a ledger to read off from. They don't have it's not being explained why you do certain things, why you don't do other things. They're not being told along the way when to hunt this stand, when not to. These stands aren't even being located to begin with. So as you can see, very powerful piece of the puzzle. This is why I feel so strongly about transition area, guys.